Hey, this is Vu, and today I'm going to talk about how to be a better clutch player. There's a few specific things I think a lot of people aren't really considering when they're in the clutch that if they did, they would be significantly better in those situations. So I've created a checklist to go over, but first, a word from our sponsor. Hey guys, look at this new box I just found. Sponsored content. That's not supposed to be in there. Elemental knives, what are those? And, oh, that's not supposed to happen. Let's open this baby up. There you go. And what's this little note on the side? It says, hey, listen, this knife is sharp. Do not play with this knife. That's true. I know it. This knife is very sharp, but it's a beauty as well. And it's got heft behind it too. Oh my. Let's check out the second one. That one's easier to open and it's a lure. Oh, it's a beauty. Link in the description. Link in the description. Now, the first thing to think about here is, do you have any advantages? And if you're a little bit newer to the game, you might think no, that's why it's a clutch. However, in reality, you probably have some sort of an advantage that you can try to play off to give yourself a basis for how you can go for the clutch. And if you don't have any advantages, you're probably considering saving. So the three advantages that I'm mainly thinking about here are positioning advantages, time advantages, and information advantages. An information advantage is sometimes as simple as the idea that your opponents don't know where you are and you're in, a 3v1. And by being in a 3v1, it means their defense, if you're on T side, I'm thinking here, their defense has to be fairly spread out. They can't really be covering every angle. And if they don't know where you are and where you're coming from, you can try to pop out and catch the first player off guard to grab a kill. And then you do lose that information advantage. However, you're trying to parlay that into a, positioning or time advantage. For example, you come out through Palace here, you grab the kill on the guy towards CT, and then you plant the bomb so they're forced to work into you, and you can try to work with that advantage instead of the information advantage that you previously had. Now, a position advantage is most obviously thought about if you're in a situation where you're on CT side in something like a 1v3 and the bomb is down in your control. If there's a lot of time on the clock, you don't really have a time advantage, although, in theory, they do have to eventually get the bomb in the allotted time, but it's not really that much of a pressure. The main thing you have is the position where you hold control of the bomb and they have to try to attack you and become the king of the hill, grab the bomb from you, right? Now, the time advantage, most easily thought of if the bomb is ticking down and your opponents are forced to actually make their way into the bomb site. Now, the thing to realize here is just because the bomb is planted does not mean you have a big time advantage. And the only real way you can really change up your gameplay is if you have a major advantage in one of those categories. So you have to consider, do you want to play passive or aggressive? And this is where I'm talking about you need to have a major advantage in one of those three categories if you want to switch up from the default playstyle, which is kind of aggressive passive. And what I mean by that is you're trying to get angles where you can take a few shots and you can fall back and reposition. So you're trying to maintain any semblance of information advantage you can by, knowing they're working into the bomb site because you've got the bomb planted, you get a kill and you rotate around and go somewhere else. Now, if you don't have the bomb planted, if you're in something like a 1v4 on T side, if you have plenty of time to work with, you can actually do something very similar. You can imagine, going middle, grabbing a kill on a guy playing window in a 1v4, you turn it to a 1v3, and then you can essentially reset. You can move anywhere else on the map. They have to continue to try to hold everything, and it's almost like you've given yourself a free leg up compared to where you used to be. Now, again, aggressive passive or like semi-aggressive is what you're thinking about in these situations as your default. But if you have a major advantage in terms of time or positioning specifically, or information maybe, you can play passive if it warrants it. And if you have a pretty big disadvantage, you can play kind of hyper aggressive. However, if you're at a big enough disadvantage, you're probably thinking about saving. So the main thing you're thinking about is this semi-aggressive play, or, for example, if the bomb is very ticked down, if they don't have much time, for example, they can't clear out every angle in the bomb site as they try to retake. Maybe they went to the wrong bomb site to begin with because your teammates threw a really good fake. That's where you can start to play fully passive to try to just YOLO to take down the bomb diffuser or something like that. Now, it doesn't mean you can't sometimes play a gimmicky play, for example, hiding at firebox, even in a 1v2 with the bomb not ticked down. However, more often than not, you're going to find success by playing semi-aggressive, catching a player off guard, and grabbing a frag. And part of that is that you need to, third point, consider how your opponents win the round. Now, if you've considered how your opponents win the round in something like a 2v1 when you're on T side, a major portion of how they win the round is by sticking together and trading. You know, if you're trying to win a round, you're thinking trade out as a team, which means run together. And if you play against someone that's playing semi-aggressive at an angle where they can take a few shots and reposition, that's how you, as the player taking a few shots and repositioning, get a frag without being traded. So part of what you're trying to do is play against the way your opponents are trying to win the round. And this is actually very good advice to consider if you're the one anti-clutching, if you're the one in the 3v1. Think to yourself, how does my opponent win this round? And play against that. Don't leave that opening for him to find an entry and get an opening to get back into the round. And you, as the clutcher, can think, you know, they're going to try and play against that. I can try and play against how they're playing against that. They're trying to stick together. They're trying to do certain things. And you can try to catch them off guard and work your way around that. Now, the other thing to think about is the element of surprise, and this is really just an offset of the information advantage. If you have an information advantage, just make sure you're not giving that up for free. You know, if you've planted the bomb at tri-stack and your opponents are rotating over from B, don't give up the advantage you have of you can be anywhere. Don't toss a flash down randomly that gives away your position. You know, you can try to use a flash as bait, you know, toss a flash over middle or something so they don't think you're there, or they don't think you're towards CT and you go for a pick, but just don't give it up for free is my main advice. And you want to be constantly trying to reposition when you can. That's the idea of playing semi-aggressive, and this can be very relevant, especially when the bomb's not planted on T side here, especially on a map like Train, where you can kind of grab a kill from T-Con and there's everywhere on the map you can go from there. You maintain the information advantage by constantly repositioning and not letting them hone in on your location. And that also goes well on the CT side if the terrorists are, you know, kind of in middle, for example, and they're trying to figure something out in something like a 3v1, you can go over to connector, grab a frag, and then rotate back around and try to keep them guessing where exactly you are coming from. Now, off the back of all of those, you can try to really maintain an idea of how to play out the round specifically, how you want to actually go from frag to frag to frag and close it out. Now, a lot of the time, these are going to be kind of general ideas that you pass through your mind and try to work on quickly in the moment, and then afterwards you think about it a little bit more in depth. You know, you go through a clutch, you fail a 1v3 and think, what was I doing there? How can I do it better? What could I have done better? So the next time you have it in your mind already exactly how you want to play it out. But optimally, you can think of all of these things and use those to lay a groundwork for exactly how you're going to play out the clutch that you are currently in. And in certain situations, especially if you already know the location of your opponents, you can very linearly lay out and decide exactly how you're going to go for the play, where you go, I'm going to go for this frag. My opponent, how does he win the round? Well, he wins the round by trading, so he's going to peek out on me to go for the frag, and I can try and swing on that guy as well. Things like that. Those are things that you want to be thinking about. Eventually, best case scenario, this stuff kind of goes into the back of your mind and you end up kind of working on this naturally, and it's the next step of kind of 4D chess that you actually have to think about. But my final piece of advice here is don't overthink the situation. I see this incredibly often in lower level players, or especially mid-level players, where you have the idea and you've seen players make, 4D chess level plays where they go for triple fakes in 1v1s and they go for these crazy outplays. In reality, unless you know your opponent is a smart and competent player, just make the initially smart play. Don't try to outthink the guy that I'm not going to make the initially smart play because my opponent is gonna counter that? Well, if you don't know your opponents are smart, if you're somewhere like DMG where there's a decent chance they're probably not very good, don't overthink yourself, because then you're kind of you're catching yourself 2 layers deep, right? You know, if they do counter the smart play, then this 3 layers deep play will get you a round win. However, if they're 1 layer ahead of you, or if they're actually just too bad to even think about that, then you lose both of those scenarios. You're kind of adding an extra scenario where you lose. That's my best advice for someone in mid ranks. I see this so often. People trying to do 4D chess and their opponent is sitting there like, what are we playing, checkers? Don't do that, guys. If there's an initially smart play, make the initially smart play. You know, plant the bomb when it's safe to plant the bomb instead of faking it and trying to grab the crazy 3K spray down, because you want to make the play that helps you most in the long run. In any case, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.